So when you think about the city of New Orleans, there are a few things that come to mind. What is one of the biggest things that comes to mind when you hear the word New Orleans? Mardi Gras. So, and what is identifiable about Mardi Gras and other places in that town? It is the music, right? This amazing jazz music in this city that holds it and develops it. And the wide variety of people that gather in this city. We had the opportunity to go on Wednesday night to Preservation Hall in New Orleans. Preservation Hall is a place that jazz music has been developed and enriched for decades, generations. And they have concerts every night, 7, 8, 9, 10 p.m., 45 minutes. If you are ever in New Orleans, you must go to Preservation Hall. Don't let me hear a story of how you went to that city and did not go there, okay? It is, even if you don't like jazz music, it is amazing to hear, and you're so close, it's a small space. I mean, it is about as big as wide as this pew, and maybe 3/4 of the way back is how big the room is, and they cram a bunch of people in there, and these musicians are right on top of you, and you not only hear them, but you're part of them, and they're amazing. And on Saturday morning, on our final worship time together for the assembly, some of these musicians came to lead music during our worship time. And I didn't know that they were going to be there, and so when we walked in, we saw some of them getting ready. We're like, oh wow, this is going to be good. And as they started to play, I mean, in this New Orleans jazz style of, songs like, When the Saints Come Marching In, and these other great spirituals and just amazing music. And here we are, about 900 plus ELCA Lutherans, mostly white. And we're trying to let go of our inhibitions, right? When we're being led in this music by these soulful, mostly, but not all, mostly African American men. And these jazz musicians that just, and we're kind of, we start to clap, we're tapping our feet and swaying, and those of us that are trying to be comfortable with, well, I want to capture this, right? So we go up there, we video them on our phones, right? So we got a bunch of people around them videoing. And then we start dancing a little bit, in our really awkward, we're trying to get into it, It's like we wanted to, but we're kind of struggling. And then in the middle of this one song, this trumpet player, big man, he gets up for his solo, and it's like all our inhibitions are kind of set free. And he pulls us into this moment, and everyone kind of rises up, and we put down our bulletins, the safety of the bulletin, right? We set that down and get off our chairs, and we're getting into it. We're still awkward, we don't have any soul in our movement, but we kind of let those inhibitions go. We had no choice but to kind of let loose. We really were free. And the weights of our ELCA Lutheranism were set free that day. And we ran with perseverance during that worship time. And then when we got to songs, it was interesting, because there are a lot of traditional songs that we sang as well, traditional hymns, and it's like we sang them better. And one powerful thing at the assembly, when they have that many people gathered, we sing really well, but it's even better. It was something about that worship time. And then, when they led us out, when all the saints go marching in, being led by a New Orleans jazz band, that's something. My gosh. But it was this trumpet player that pushed us from the comfort of our seats. It's powerful. Now the assembly, much of the assembly it's filled with business that you have to attend to. right? There's elections that have to happen and budget things that you got to go through. And we also elected a new vice president of the ELCA. And the vice president is the highest elected role of a lay person in the church, similar to like our church council president. This is an unpaid position. And we elected a gentleman by the name of William Horn, not Pastor Bill Horn of Viroqua, who was with you last night. If you know him, he's retired. But William Horn of Florida. He is an African-American man and with great calling and skill, and I think he is just the exact right person to be in this leadership role. He presides over the church council that meets quarterly and very involved in all of the leadership of our church. And it's powerful to have not only the gifts he brings, but as an African-American man in this time and in this place in our country's history, is a powerful voice as well. But much of the assembly was filled with actions and resolutions that you could be described as themes of increasing diversity around all spectrums of our life together. Increased racial and social awareness, and continuing to advance and push ecumenical relationships with other church bodies, even the Catholics. There is a joint group that has been working to develop further ecumenical relationships and understandings in preparation for the 500th anniversary of the Reformation, which is next year. And the Assembly wholeheartedly approved a resolution to keep moving forward with this agreement. And we had standing in front of us an Archbishop of the Roman Catholic Church who was holding the gift of a communion chalice that was given to him by our presiding bishop, Elizabeth Eaton, and he said from the podium, "I look forward to the day when we can share this cup together." And this Archbishop of the Catholic Church is not a young man. Okay? That's a powerful thing for him to say. We're not joining or anything, but to be in an ecumenical relationship where we can share communion with each other, that's huge. The assembly was also filled with words that challenged all of us about how even in our church's emphasis upon service and justice and inclusivity, how much we are still failing and how much work there is still yet to do. And all of these themes around all these things challenged many of us and made many of us uncomfortable. Me too. There were some words that I didn't know quite what to do with. Words that I have to be honest, that made me question, wow, am I the right person at this time and place to be in leadership of this church? Not that I don't agree with the steps that are being taken, but I ask this of myself because sometimes it is so much safer and easier to be in our comfortable places, to sit in our comfortable chairs and in our comfortable pews, and to be in the comfortable places of our life of faith with each other. And sometimes it is easier to have our shackles on because it keeps us safe. Now, the writer of Hebrews in our text today lists up for us how throughout history people of faith have been courageous in not only facing their failures and sufferings, but how they have continued to push forward in the steps of faith against sometimes overwhelming odds. That even though they faced shackles of fear, abuse, death, that they did not stop dancing in their faith and pushing the limits. So when these words come before us in our text, let us also lay aside every weight and the sin that clings so closely. We too are pushed to speak and reflect honestly about what shackles us in our life. And there could be many things. Past mistakes, being wronged by someone else, doing something wrong in our own life, disease, old age, lost opportunities, poverty. All those things shackle us. Or else it could be things like traditions and our ethnicity and the privilege that our ethnicity, for the most of us, gives us. For political allegiances that pulls us into one corner or another in our discourse with each other. Things that social media tells us is popular. All those things can shackle us. Or the things maybe like skills that we don't have, or the education we don't have, or the money that we don't have, or the abuse that we have suffered, or the anger that is in our hearts and in our minds. These things shackle us. The sins that we do and the sin that we are bound to. All these things and so many others, they bind us, they shackle us, they weigh us down. And then in the rhythm of our life of faith together, in our worship life, and in our community life, our faith life, in our rhythm of worship, life of faith, our prayers, our scripture, our liturgy, our music, our fellowship, our shared peace, gathering around Holy Communion, our personal devotion, our peaceful and quiet meditation. In all of these things, we seek this freedom from God, and in all of our steps of our lives, Christ meets us and makes the proclamation and makes the freedom from these shackles real. But in our daily life, these things continue to weigh us down. But there is a new weight that I have been made aware of this past week. One that I haven't thought much about, to be honest. And this is the weight that makes me uneasy. It is the weight of being comfortable. Because that is the weight that I like to feel. Like a warm blanket on a cold night, or that favorite little spot in my couch or chair. That weight that makes me forget or takes me away from some of the injustices in our world. It is the weight that keeps me from raising my voice when I see a wrong. It is the weight that keeps me from being honest about injustice that surrounds me. It is a weight that causes me to protect what I have rather than to give what I can. When I say give what I can, I'm talking about so much more than just money. Obviously, that's part of it, but to give of my soul and of my everything that I am. And sometimes the shackles are more comfortable because they keep me in a safer place. So I have to face this weight of being comfortable and the church's voice and role in being comfortable. I have to be honest about how I like it. But it is the cheers and the voices of the faithful ones around me. Not only those who have gone before me in a cloud of witnesses, but in the cloud of witnesses that are around me as I presently live and talk. It is those voices that help me kick off those covers and kicks my butt off that couch. It is a support of one another. So in these freeing words from Hebrews, in which Paul says, "You have been made free," the challenge of this text for me and us this morning, the challenge is to not retreat and put the shackles back on. And I think we do that in this way. When we are faced with things in our world and new awareness of things in our, not only our church, but in our communities, that makes us uncomfortable, that challenges us, don't instinctually run back to the comfortable spot on that couch or under the blanket, or that safe little corner of your pew. Don't retreat to our comfort zones of all these things, of our old traditions, of our long-standing political or social agendas or positions or whatever it is. Now, I'm not saying that those things are wrong. Okay? But I do believe that we need time and experience with all those things that challenge us and that makes us uncomfortable. We need to sit with them and engage them and be part of them in order to better decipher what it is that gives us freedom and what it is that shackles us down. Now, the writer of Hebrews reminds us that through people and situations that challenge our comfortable settings, that through all their voices and through Christ, that we are unbound and set free. But you see, the witnesses that surround us are not only those who lift us to new awarenesses and to new ideas. They are not only people who lift us to a new awareness around things like race relations in our country. And we are back in it, my friends. Just in Milwaukee last night, more unrest. They are not only people and voices that lift us to new awareness around things like white privilege. And some of us hear that words and we go, whoa, 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 whoa. I don't have any privilege. But when you sit with a person of color or a minority in this country in 2016, and you hear their stories of how they are treated, it is very real. And we need to come to grips with that. When we hear, it is not only voices of awareness that challenge us around things such as justice and equality for our friends and our family and our neighbors in the LGBT community. It is not only voices and awareness that rise around us, around violence in our communities and in our homes, and around corruption of our political and governmental agencies, and around the voices that barrage us of political noise. It's not only those voices of awareness that challenge us to these new day that we are in, but it is also the voices of those of our history who had an opportunity to speak and walk in steps of justice and failed. And we're able to look back upon history and the revelation that those failures of history teach us. It is all those voices together challenging us and pushing us to take off these shackles of safety in our lives. My friends, Christ has come to this world and He has removed these shackles and freed us from this sin that lives around us. And the church, God's faithful ones, you, our neighbors down the street, our neighbors across the county, our neighbors across this land and world, our church, God's faithful ones, is pushing us to explore the new regions of this freedom. And it pushes us into some place that sometimes we aren't always settled. It's like that trumpet player rising up in the midst of this gathering and frees us from ourselves in that moment. And this solo that he plays, proclaiming the freedom-giving grace that Christ has made real in our lives, I want you to dance in this song, even in our awkward steps and claps. We cannot avoid each other any longer. So in this political season, when we get pulled farther apart, embrace one another, walk with one another. In these social issues that cause us so much inner angst, trust in the love and the grace that Christ calls us all into, and dance in this amazing song of forgiveness. Thanks be to God. Amen.